Hello everyone. Today I will tell you 5 horror stories about small attics. If you like them, please subscribe to us to bring you more exciting stories. I heard this story from a good friend of mine. He said that it happened while he was staying in a cabin in the mountainous woods with some friends. As soon as he entered the room, he smelled something dreadful. He said that he had never smelled anything that disgusting before in his life. He and his friends were tired and they just wanted to relax, but they had to go in search of that smell. He looked everywhere and couldn't find anything in the room that could cause such a stench. They didn't think that they would be able to spend the night there. One of his friends opened the closet, and in there, they found a hatch in the ceiling, and a board was slightly out of place. The smell was even stronger there. They found that they had access to the attic. Naturally, everyone was imagining the worst, but one of his braver friends offered to go up into the attic to find out what was up there. He quickly moved towards the hatch and hoisted himself up, and as soon as he was up there, he was back down. He fell and was scrambling away from the hatch in the closet. There's a guy. There's a man. He's sleeping up there. Everyone was shocked and couldn't believe that there was someone sleeping up there. Could someone who smells that bad be alive up there? The guy who went up there said that he was grinning while he slept. Everyone was freaking out that there might be some homeless guy in the lodge sleeping above them. So another bright friend stepped up to the hatch to take a look and to tell the homeless guy to get out. He took a flashlight up there with him and shone it into the dark, dusty attic. The flashlight's light fell upon a dark shadow lying on the ground up there. The smell was almost unbearable. A pale white face stood out in the darkness, and indeed, with his eyes shut, grinning. He was grinning in a very strange way, so my friend decided to move in closer. The man's eyes didn't open. Could he not feel the bright light on his face or sense the presence of others with him in the attic? My friend drew closer, and the man continued to grin in that strange manner. It was like his mouth was wriggling. When he got close enough to see clearly, he almost fainted. The man was dead. It was obvious. The movements of maggots were manipulating his lips with their feasting to give the appearance of a grin. The original poster's experience ends here, but there was an interesting comment in the thread which I will now read. Well, that's amazing. I had a very similar experience. A mutual friend said something about a rumor of a homeless person hiding in some attic of a lodge out in the mountains like your story. We were interested in exploring urban legends at the time, so we all decided to go in search of the lodge. My friend was adamant he knew where it was. There was a lodge where he said it would be, but we found nothing in the attic. It was a little disappointing, and we kind of forgot about it. About half a year later, we were in the same area, and we thought that we'd try to find that lodge again. We go back to the same lodge. It was some unmanned one which people rarely checked. We were in Husson. We decided to head to the closet and we went to remove the panels there to gain access to the attic. When we looked up there, we found nothing but dirty magazines and some bedding up there. There was no sign to the owner of those items. The attic was vacant. There was a terrible smell up there. This happened when I was in the first or second year of junior high school. I think I was about 13 years old. I grew up in the countryside. But I guess that was because some homeless people were hanging around up there. I said aloud for some reason, no one up here. One of my friends was having a look around. He lifted up the bedding and said, there's something sticking out here. He then said it was kind of sticky too. I spun around thinking he was touching some kind of discharge or effluvia, and I go to chastise him. But then I see a mummified hand protruding from the bedding. Yeah. We bolted it. We clattered down from the attic and dashed down the mountain to the nearest police station. They checked out the lodge, and we had to make statements. It wasn't a fake hand up there, it was real. I was expecting to find nothing, and believed that my friend heard some urban legend created by an internet troll. But I was proven wrong. It was a wild experience. I wouldn't have shared otherwise if it wasn't for ops. The attic and the inn. This is the most terrifying and confusing thing that's ever happened to me. And it happened on a school trip in Kyoto. I was in junior high school at the time. After a busy day, and sitting down to dinner, I took a bath and got ready to enjoy some free time before going to sleep. I had friends in the hotel room next to mine, so I went next door to see what they were up to. We were sitting around playing Uno, and after a while, we got bored of it. Someone suggested sharing scary stories, and we were all interested in that. There were about 10 of us by the time we decided to change the conversation to spooky things. I didn't even know everyone, but they seemed fun, so we hit the lights to make the room more dark and gathered around in a circle. One kid I didn't know at all said he knew of something scary. These old hotels used to be used for exorcisms in years gone by. Some say that you can find evidence of rituals in these hotel rooms. Kids like us on school trips were often the victims, and some have found weird religious talisman and stuff like that. Let's search the room for them. I thought this was a little different because I was expecting a scary story, but I didn't mind it added another element to the night, and I was eager to keep it going. So we saw a room. We looked behind paintings, in the closet, under the TV unit. We couldn't find anything. Before long, we got bored and started hurling pillows at one another. It was way more fun. We threw pillows and blankets and stuff like that at one another, and then we started wrestling. After we were out of breath and panting, the kid who suggested the search had found a hatch to the attic. It was just like a normal household attic hatch, but it was in the bathroom at the end of the room. My friend, whose room we were in, we'll call him he wasn't a bad guy, but he was the type to get easily overexcitable. So he called out to the rest of the group, "Hey, let's go up there. I'm pretty sure you can get into the next room from up here." I thought to myself, a dark, claustrophobic, dusty attic. Do I want to go up there now? The others refused as well. They were tired and didn't want to get dirty. I guess, well, I'm going to go up there, and I'm going to go look around. Come on, guys, give me a booster. So a couple of kids went over and constructed themselves into a makeshift ladder, like a human pyramid. My friend opened the hatch, and a thick cloud of dust spilled out. We guessed that no one had been up there for a while. We saw the darkness within the attic. I looked at us and he smiled and said, "It's dark up here." "What did you expect? For it to be bright," I said, which brought about a laugh from the others. He then hoisted himself up, and his head and shoulders disappeared into the dark, then his whole body. I heard him say, I thought that he must have found something. Something's up here." He was squatting, and I could only see his head when he looked down now and then. The opening was so small that we couldn't really see him and what he was talking about. So he picked up whatever he found and brought it to the hatch. The other kids began to gather near the hatch opening, and we saw his hands emerge. Everyone was like, "Whoa, what's this?" It was so dark up there, so likely he had no idea what the hell he had just picked up. Had he known, and considering the outcome of this story, I bet you would have never touched those things. I certainly wouldn't have, and I'm sure you wouldn't either. He found a small red patterned paper doll, a red notebook, and some kind of paper religious talisman. They must have been up there for years as they were thick with black dust. The talisman was so old and faded that the letters were unreadable. The red book was about the size of a pocket dictionary, and the reddish cover had some writing on it. I threw them down from the attic, either deliberately or out of shock. Of course, none of us made an attempt to catch them. We dodged them and watched the red book land on the floor. A small cloud of dust emerged from it. The paper doll floated down and landed in the corner of the room. It landed propped up against the wall. It seemed to watch over us. The paper talisman fluttered and followed the direction of the paper doll, as if they didn't wish to be separated. You can call me crazy, but I believe that doll was staring at us as he came down from the attic. He went over to it and picked it up. Then he threw it back down again. I'm sure he found it creepy. But in spite of himself, he gave us a half smile and then picked up the other objects and threw them down on the floor again. No one said a word, except and we all left that bathroom. We didn't want to be near those things. One other kid, he called out to, "Hey guys, this is bad. Put that back, would you?" Others called out in support. So I decided to do the right thing and restore the objects to their rightful places. He picked them up, dusted them down, muttered an apology, and then started back towards the attic. We helped him up and helped him down, and then everyone went back to their room. The tension created by investigating the attic had cleared, which was good because bedtime was nearing. I was in the room next to the room we were playing in, and that was A's room. Lights out time came and went. Our teachers on the trip came round to each room to make sure that we were all in bed and not messing around. Our rooms were left open. I don't know why I thought it was weird at the time, and even weirder now, but the doors were wedged open, and light from the corridors spilled in. Maybe our doors were left open so it was easier to find out who was talking and not sleeping, or something. It was annoying because I could hear the teacher's footfall padding up and down the corridor. I guess that it was kind of comforting too because it took my mind off the events of the night and the objects they found in the attic, especially that paper doll. I fell asleep listening to the footsteps of the teacher coming and going. I don't know how long I was asleep for, but I was awoken by the sound of some loud bang. I felt like the whole building was rumbling. I thought that it was just the aftermath of some dream, so I lay in bed waiting, on bated breath. I wondered if my friends were all awake like I was. That thought comforted me. That comfort was broken by the sound of further banging. I screamed. I was scared. I wasn't the only one who screamed. There, I realized that the banging and the screaming was coming from the room next to mine. I realized that the scream sounded a bit like Hayes' voice. Then, from the corridor, I heard the rushing footfall at the teacher and him asking, "What's wrong?" As he passed by my door, all the kids on the trip, including myself, spilled out into the hallway to mutter and steal glimpses of what was happening in A's room. I saw it. I saw it all. And I wished I hadn't. A was in there flailing its limbs against the wall. He had blood in his eyes. Seeing this produced an audible gasp. I looked around and realized that it came from me. He didn't look like he was deliberately trying to hurt himself. He looked like he was desperately trying to resist something. I was screaming to something unseen, telling it to keep away and stay back. The teacher was screaming right back at him to stay calm and pull himself together. Then I said something that will always stay with me. "Hands. Hands. They're coming out of the wall." He was held down on the ground but was still desperately trying to get away from something. Perhaps the unseen hands he was so terrified of. He was screaming himself hoarse. I was very concerned. The teacher said, "Hey, call an ambulance." I don't know who that order was directed at, and I don't know who called the ambulance either, but in what felt like seconds, emergency services workers rushed into the room carrying a stretcher. I was put onto that stretcher, and he was still thrashing and screaming. He was getting more and more violent. They took him away. They took him away in that ambulance that arrived in seconds. The teacher who ordered someone to call an ambulance ordered us all back to bed and told us that I must have had a bad dream and nothing more. He would accept no questions and offer no further answers. I can't speak for the other kids, but I'm almost certain that they felt the same as I did. There was no way in hell that I was going to be able to get a decent night's sleep after witnessing something like that. I got up and went in search of the teacher. I thought that I should tell him about what happened, so I headed over to the teacher's room. I knocked the door, and he answered. He looked nervous. I told him what happened with the attic and the talisman, the red book, and the paper doll. It's completely unrelated to that. Don't worry. I'm pretty sure that he was sleepwalking. You know, you shouldn't worry though. Go back to bed, would you? Don't worry about telling anyone either. I'll speak to the hotel staff, and it will all be fine. Okay. You can tell the others too. He shut the door in my face. I just had to go back to my room. I didn't know what else to do except climb under the covers. I was so scared I couldn't stand lying in bed with my head out of the covers with that light from the hall spilling in, jumping at every sound the hotel made. I didn't want to lie in bed with my head pointed towards the ceiling or towards the wall where my friend was blasting his limbs against. So I lay there that night with my head under the covers, waiting for the light of morning to creep through my protective layer of comfort. By the time morning came around, there was no sign of it anywhere. Most of the students were downstairs at breakfast, but not all of us. I didn't get it. I saw the regular faces from my class, but some of the kids from May's room weren't anywhere to be seen. I guessed that they were upstairs packing, but when I went to look, I couldn't find them. I started to pack my things, but the teacher came into my room, and that we were all instructed to gather in A's room. We students were asked to kneel in a line in his room. I was no longer scared. I was worried that I was going to be somehow blamed for A's episode. I was wrong. This happened when I was in the first or second year of junior high school. I think I was about 13 years old. I grew up in the countryside. Very wrong. After we were all set up, the employees of the hotel entered the room. Then, 3 people dressed in white entered. I realized they were Shinto priests. We were all told to join hands and close our eyes, and then we had to recite a chant that the priests taught us there and then. I guess that it was some sort of cleansing ritual to purify us of whatever evil awoke by meddling with those items in the attic. Well, I had a long time to conclusion as the chanting didn't stop for 2 hours. We were then released. We then left the school trip, but without my friend. I wondered if I'd see him when we went back to school, but I didn't. I asked the teacher from the trip about him, and I was told that my friend was transferred to another school. I didn't believe that for a second. Some kid at school said that there was a rumor that it was now in an asylum and he had lost his mind. I went to his family home, but all I saw was a for sale sign and curtain-less windows glaring back at me, revealing no sign of life inside. His whereabouts to me, at least, and anyone I've asked, is completely unknown. I guess it goes the same for his family. I have had a lot of time to consider various possibilities and to ask myself unanswerable questions. When the teacher asked someone to call an ambulance, he was talking to us kids. I guess there were no other adults in the room at that time. The ambulance arrived very quickly. I don't remember the faces of the ambulance workers, and if they had their faces covered with black masks. That's all I can remember. Also, none of the teachers accompanied in the ambulance. He went alone. Those people, everything is left up to my imagination, and perhaps yours, of what goes on in that hotel. I often wonder if there was something going on behind the scenes on that trip. The kid who suggested searching for those things we would eventually find in that hotel room. I never saw him again. Why did they disappear? And why doesn't anyone care? Was it all a plan? These are the questions I ask myself each year, and the events of that night in the hotel room are now 20 years behind me. I started living alone not too long ago. The place I got wasn't anything special. It was pretty old in a small apartment. Weird stuff happened pretty much as soon as I moved in. This happened when I was in the first or second year of junior high school. I think I was about 13 years old. I grew up in the countryside. I started to get really sick really often, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me too. The feeling of being watched comes from a specific location in the apartment, the sliding wardrobe. I'm scared of that wardrobe. I don't have the sixth sense or the ability to sense ghosts or anything like that, but I picked up major bad vibes from that thing. The landlord seemed to know something. He seemed uneasy about the closet too. Also, the neighbors didn't linger near my apartment. I thought that there was more at play than I realized. I guess you could say I was right. I thought about something that I had read on a message board, Some kind of creepy story that convinced me that it was time to check out the attic, you know. Those kind of stories where someone is hiding up there in the attic. Yeah, that I decided to just stick my head up there and take a look. Access to the attic had to be made through the closet. I removed the ceiling panel and slowly lifted myself up. I held a flashlight in my hand and scanned the attic. I was surprised to see that the attic was virtually empty, save for its tattered light gray plastic bag. I moved over to it and opened it. Inside the bag was a videotape and a bundle of hair. The videotape looked so dirty and old that I doubted it would play. It was weird, but I just had to give it a try. I'm a curious individual. I just had to try and find out what was on that tape. I took it out of the attic and approached my VCR. Yeah, this happened a few years ago. I popped it in, and to my surprise, the video started without issue. What appeared on the screen was a static shot of my room. There was a man sat on my bed. I'm guessing that he was the guy who lived there before me. He was restless. He threw himself down on the bed at points, appeared to be counting something. At other points, too, he is constantly scratching himself and looking around the room. It was edited because after intervals of 15 seconds or so, the position of the man in the room changed. The whole video was only about 5 minutes long. The position of the video camera must have been beneath or by my window to get the angles I saw on the tape. I found it disturbing because I couldn't figure out why someone wanted to film this guy and then leave it in the attic with some hair. I was quite sure that the hair in the bag didn't belong to the man. Another disturbing point was the fact that the man seemed very nervous and frightened. I needed a second set of eyes on this, so I asked a friend of mine to come over and check it out. He came and watched the tape with me in my apartment. He said that he thought the man in the video looked like he wanted to leave but couldn't, like he was too scared to move. I said that the man in the video gave me the creeps. My friend said that I was wrong. I didn't know what he meant, but then he pointed something out to me in the video that I hadn't seen. He said that what he was pointing at should have given me the creeps more. I had been too interested in what that man was doing. I hadn't looked around the room. In the closet, though it was only open to a crack, was the figure of a woman. She was staring at the man. After every 15 seconds, she moved, and you could see more and more of her. She had long, dark, silky hair. She was in a different place in the apartment each time that there was an edit in the tape, behind the door, looking through the glass in front of the door, under the desk, in the corner of the room. She was everywhere. I stayed with my friend that night, and in the morning, I called the landlord and said that I wanted out. I didn't even want to set foot in that apartment again. I barely took anything with me. My belongings seemed somehow tainted. I handed the tape to the landlord, and I don't know what he did with it. I didn't carry that. Before I left, I went around the building knocking on doors, asking anyone who answered about what happened in that room. I heard from someone in the building that the former resident murdered his wife and hid the body in the closet. He videotaped his own torment and hid it along with a keepsake from his wife in the attic, perhaps as a warning to others, but also perhaps as a memento. I'm glad I live nowhere near that place nowadays. It was the day after I moved into my new apartment when this happened. When I came home from university one day, I hit the lights and went to turn on the TV, but it didn't come on. The lights were fine, but the TV was out. I noticed that all the outlets in my apartment weren't in either. It was late, and I couldn't do much about it except leave a message for someone to come take a look the following day. The next day, the caretaker or janitor in my building came to take a look at the issue. He turned up early in the morning. I was a late riser, so I didn't like that all that much. He thought that maybe a mouse had chewed through a cable or something. He said that he needed to access the attic because that was where the cables were. The access panel was in the toilet room. He removed it and climbed up. He was up there for seconds, and then as I turned to leave him to it, I heard him scream and he came back down instantly. He was shaking and trying to catch his breath. He said through labored breath, "There's a dead body up there." The emergency services were called, and the police and an ambulance arrived. It was an incredibly manic situation. Apparently, the guy had gotten into the attic somehow before I moved in. There was evidence that he was living there. It's my guess that someone didn't lock the door after we viewed the apartment, which allowed this stranger to gain access to the attic, a place to hide. There were cushions, cans, and the shushan, and other bits and pieces up there. It looked like he had settled in. Who knows how long he'd been up there? The suspected cause of death was a heart attack, and during his struggle before his final moments, his foot or hand dislodged the wiring, which led to my electricity being out. So on my first night at my new apartment, I slept in bed with a corpse above me. I was moved into another apartment in the same building at no cost, and I can't complain. I'm just glad. We found the body before the smell kicked in. True crime, the attic. So in this video, we have discussed the out there, the conceivable, and the downright creepy. I want to end this collection with our feet firmly on the ground, preferably beneath an attic hatch. This final story should hopefully lend some credence to the stories you have heard, and it's 100% true. On the 3rd of November 2020, a call was made to Seoul City Police Station in Saitama. Saitama is where I used to live. It borders Tokyo. The call came from a worker in City Hall. It was a welfare call. The civil servant was concerned about an elderly resident of the town who they hadn't seen in the last couple of years. They requested that an officer stop by and see if all was well at his home. An officer was dispatched to the address of the resident in question, which was a condominium. The elderly man shared his address with his 55-year-old son. The officer asked if he could come in and see if the old man was there. The son granted this request. When the old man couldn't be found, the officer began a search of the property. His search terminated in the attic with a gruesome discovery up there. The officer found the body of the elderly man, chopped up into pieces. The son, Akira's Hidea, was arrested and taken in for questioning. Under interrogation, his Hideo said that his father passed away a few years ago at home. For some reason, he believed that if he was to report his father's passing, then he would be labeled as the prime suspect for his death. He convinced himself that he would be accused of murdering his father, so instead of doing something, he just left his father's body to deteriorate in the apartment with him. Despite this shocking revelation, a disturbing question remained unanswered. Why did Akira dismember his father's body? Akira's Hideo says that in May of 2019, the owner of that building, which he and his father lived in, was considering putting it up for auction as part of the preparations. In-condo inspections were being performed in order to keep his father's death a secret. His Hideo decided to hide the body in the attic. It's unclear what part of the home he kept it in until that point. When asked about this, why the attic, his Hideo said these chilling words, that the body wouldn't fit, so I had to cut it into pieces. An examination of the body revealed no signs of trauma or injury aside from where the dismembering cuts had been made. While the investigation is still ongoing, the police currently believe his Hideo's father, who would be in his 80s if he were alive today, likely died of illness or non-violent causes. And so, the son is not currently facing any homicide charges, although he's been placed under arrest for abandoning and dismembering a corpse. Could Akira's motive to do this have been the intention to steal his father's pension? And if we explore this theory, can we be sure that there hasn't been a murder? I will leave that for you to decide. But I found that a similar incident has occurred in the past in Shizuoka Prefecture in 2016. A 57-year-old unemployed man illegally received millions of yen in pension benefits without notifying the Japanese pension service, despite his mother's death from illness. The 57-year-old unemployed man was arrested on suspicion of abandoning a corpse and fraud. If you're interested in checking out the residence where his Hideo hid his father's body, I have added a Google Maps location link to the building. Yeah, I was in with this. I think it's worth just taking a little look at that and just thinking, Whoa, how didn't the smell bother you? How could you do that to your own dad? That's something that just escapes me. There's something more to this case, and I'd love to hear what you think. Anyway, as always, thank you so much for listening, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and doing all those wonderful things and liking as well. I'll see you in the next video, and thank you all so much. By the way, for your feedback in the community post I posted earlier, you've given me some wonderful ideas, and I'm definitely going to explore a lot of them. I've put them on a list, so don't be surprised if one of your ideas pops up in a future video. Until then, I'll see you soon.